Korean nationalism. The Cold War and Korean nationalism.
In the next part of this lecture, let's look at the causes and the influence of the political and ideological differences in post-liberation Korea. So as the two Koreas slowly become separated, divided, and then formal separate governments established, what we see is different kinds of nationalisms developing as an outgrowth of these.
Which war is called the war that never ended?
August 1945, Korea was liberated from colonial rule. But instead of being allowed to establish their own government, the United States and the Soviet Union felt that it was necessary to step in and to exert their influence on either side of the 38th parallel. So in the southern portion of the peninsula, the United States sent in troops and established the United States Army military government in Korea. They felt that Korea needed to be guided and tutored before they could set up their own government. And the goal of the United States was to establish a democratic government that was favorably inclined towards the United States. In May of 1948, the United Nations, at the suggestion of the United States, they support elections and sponsor elections in the southern part of the peninsula, where Syngman Rhee was elected as the first president, and we have the establishment of the Republic of Korea. The North responds, holds their own elections in August of the same year, and Kim Il-sung is elected the premier of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. So in 1948, we have the formal establishment of two separate governments. The result is that not only do we have these separate regimes, but that we also have these foreign presences and the influence of these two great powers. But after the elections, the Soviets withdraw from the northern part, the Americans withdraw from the southern part, and this sets up the stage for civil war. The Korean War lasted between 1950 and 1953. It is sparked kind of by leftist guerrillas in Jeju Island who were supportive of the communist cause, but because there was conflict along the 38th parallel, North Korea feared that South Korea would attack, and so once Kim Il-sung was able to get Soviet support, the North Koreans launched an attack in 1950. They were able to take Seoul in 3 days, and by early August they had driven the southern forces all the way down to the south and to the Busan perimeter. So the United States, under the auspices of the United Nations, they move in, and this is when General MacArthur arrives. He arrives in September of 1950 in Incheon, cuts off the supplies of the North Koreans. So they're able to recapture it, push up, but then the Chinese troops arrive, pushing UN forces all the way back down again, and then the UN forces recapture Seoul in March of the next year. So there's this fighting up and down the peninsula. Eventually there's a stalemate with negotiations, and a truce is signed in July of 1953. But as a result of Soviets occupying in the north and the Americans occupying in the south, we have this division, we have this contention between the North Korean government and the South Korean government, and it is an extension of the Cold War.
These are the keywords for this class. Liberation, the 30th parallel, establishment of ROK, Separation and DPRK, Korean War.